with an average ratio for a district. The county board also considers a coefficient of deviation, which is simply a mathematical term that measures uniformity. We may have a 50% ratio in the municipality, but if this half of the town is assessed at 25% of value, and that half is assessed at 75% of value, true, you have a 50% ratio, but you do not have uniformity. This group is underpaying, that group is overpaying. And so the purpose, therefore, of revaluation is to make uniform so that everyone's paying their fair share, no more, no less. We can argue that in the state of New Jersey, the fair share of property taxes are much too high, and that debate is going on in the legislature today. We are appraisers. Our only purpose is to make sure that everyone pays their fair share based on those demands of the Constitution. The number of appeals are looked at by the county. If, let's say, we have a municipality where every house is identical and 10% of the houses file in a tax appeal and they are successful, you no longer have uniformity because 10% are lower than the rest. So they look at the number of appeals that have taken place. Other things that they look at are zoning changes that have taken place. They look at the changes in the characteristics of properties. At one point, bi-levels were very much in vogue, and in certain communities they fell out of vogue. Same thing with split levels, certainly with contemporaries. They look at the economics. And that's occurring today with the decrease in residential values. So that which I have just described are the reasons why the agents of the director of the Division of Taxation, the county board commissioners, have ordered Maplewood to conduct this revaluation. We're involved in it as I speak, and I'll turn it over to Rick to explain the process to you.
Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the 7 steps. We've broken this down into 7 steps of the revaluation process. The steps do overlap, but for purposes of this PowerPoint, we'll do step 1, step 2, and so on. The PowerPoint that you're about to see tonight is also on our website, so if you have difficulty reading any parts of the PowerPoint or you want to go back over, simply log on to www.asinj.com and you'll see on the first page a copy of our PowerPoint. The very first step is to send out the initial letter of introduction along with the color brochure. We have sent these out approximately a month ago. All of you should have received this letter. If you didn't receive this letter, we certainly can either provide it to you again by mail, or you can simply go on our website and you can download a copy of it as well. But that's the kickoff to the revaluation process, and it talks about the first step, which we're about to get into, which is the most important step, in my opinion. That's the inspection of all of the properties in the township. We've probably gotten about 10 to 15% of the town done so far. We still have a long way to go. Any of you who have had an inspection can follow through this. If you haven't had an inspection, this will kind of tell you what to expect. And if you do go on our website, we give an idea of where we are in town and when we're going to be in a particular neighborhood. We can't get too specific because of the weather, the inconsistencies in the weather and scheduling, etc. But generally, our field personnel does work initially between the hours of 9:30 and 5. Each inspector has a photograph ID around their neck. Please, if anyone comes to your door and they don't have a photograph ID, it's not one of our representatives, so don't let them in. Our information on that photograph ID is also on file with the township, with the police dispatch, and our offices as well. You could call the tax assessor. If you're nervous in any way, shape, or form, you can simply write down the inspector's name, tell them to come back either later in the afternoon or in an hour or two, check out the name, and if that makes you feel more comfortable letting someone on your property, we encourage you to do that as well. Now, inspector comes to your property, and they are there simply to collect as much objective and subjective data about your property as possible. They will not have a value at that point in time. That's to be done later on, as you'll see in steps 2 and 3. But they are simply field inspectors who are there with a job to do, and that's to collect information relative to your property. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at the site. They're going to look at the location, and specific to the location, they're going to look at your street, the surrounding properties, and the actual physical characteristics of your property as well. So some factors have positive attributes to value, and some factors have negative attributes to value. They'll be picking up both. In this PowerPoint, this is an example here of a house with a tremendous view. That would be, in our opinion, a positive attribute to value that the site brings to the property. Lake, riverfront, not too much of that here unless it's a flooded area. But some towns, that's very desirable to have waterfront areas. So, those are examples that we've shown of what a positive influence might have on value. Negative influences on value from the site. Here's a beautiful, high-quality home that sits right in front of high-tension wires. Now, these high-tension wires are actually off the site, but they're right next to the site. So that's what I meant by looking at the surrounding environment as well. Here's a house here, again, that's on a busy road with railroad tracks right there. Train drives by, nothing wrong with the house, but the site has issues. As far as physical characteristics, here's a house here that has a very steep drop in property. This was actually, I believe, a house in Montclair. And it's a hardship to have such a steep topography, especially when you're set down. So our inspectors are going to be making notes relative to that as well. Here's another a house that's traversed with commercial development. One of the things that we ask when the inspector is at the property is to help our inspector bring light to facts that he or she might not see at that particular time. Of course, our inspector is going to see high-tension wires, a busy street, a railroad tracks, commercial development, but a cut-through street, or a street that's a cut-through feeding to an elementary school, where at 1 o'clock in the afternoon it's very quiet, but at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you have mothers picking kids up, blocking driveways, etc. There might be a local bar in town where every Friday and Saturday night it gets very noisy, but on a Monday afternoon at 2 or 3 you don't know even what's in